how did you convince these people to do it, and what were the ground rules that they gave you?
Well, yeah. So we started filming in September 2015. So, and I had had the first conversations a couple months prior to that. I knew Samantha Power from a previous work I did about based on a book of hers called Sergio, and I actually had known her previously before that because we'd both done work in Rwanda after the genocide. So, you know, but I hadn't seen her in a few years. But I just had this idea that, you know, I really questioned was it possible to make kind of a version of The War Room, which is one of my favorite documentaries, but in reverse. So that's about the first Bill Clinton campaign. Could you take a cast of characters who'd been together largely for a decade, and make a film of kind of, it's almost like a band movie in a way about them sort of going out. And yeah, I just had a hunch that, you know, big things tend to happen in the final year of a two-term presidency. So I went and met her, and she was intrigued. Her staff thought it was crazy. I went to see Ben Rhodes at the White House, who I had also known from a previous project, and he was also intrigued, and it kind of meshed with, they were at the time beginning to think about what legacy type projects they would do in that last year. But still, I was asking for access that nobody had ever given before, and then it took a while to then, you know, once they were on board, then we approached the State Department and through Kerry's chief of staff, and kind of worked that as well. So
when you say she thought it was crazy in what way? Like
crazy in that you can't, you know, the idea that we're going to be in cars and in, you know, real meetings and just with the cameras rolling was kind of, you know, the press. If you've ever sort of been in news, I mean, the way that the White House and all of these institutions handle the press is very regimented, actually, and there's just a set process, and we didn't want to be a part of that at all. And you know, I wanted to be outside of that process and then inside the rooms, and that's just, nobody had ever really done that before.
So what were the rules?
The rules were actually pretty straightforward. The rules were, you know, can't show classified material, but it's not really a problem because they're not allowed to, because none of us had security clearances. They can't bring it in the room because we don't, you know, I don't have a security clearance, so they can't bring it in the room. It was never really an issue, and that was basically it. You know, that you know, because they knew, and Ben in particular knew that, you know, it had to feel authentic, and the idea that they would have any oversight was just kind of wouldn't serve anybody's interest, and they're savvy enough to know that that wouldn't work. So, you know, in the end, it wasn't so much those kinds of rules. It was more like, could we actually be in those rooms and not get in the way? I mean, that was the biggest issue. You know, it's like, you know, because as Samantha would say to me, it's like, you know, we can't slow down, you know, because they have so much on their plate, as you saw, you know. So I found, you know, well, I chose my crew very carefully, and they were extraordinary, and they were able to work in these very tight, really, literally very small offices, usually with very small cameras, and yet still get images and sound in particular that were workable. So that was, and just kind of, you know, be able to hang out with these people, because again, we weren't in like the normal White House press room. We were literally in the West Wing when we weren't filming, just sort of sitting there, and you're right outside the Situation Room, and you know, it's very kind of close quarters, so you have to be able to just kind of blend into that and not, you know, not be a pain.